Hello everyone and welcome back to Unraveling Politics. My name is Robert. I, on the show, discuss the political news of the day and I provide my analysis in a way that people can understand. Last week we had a presidential debate. It was almost a week ago. I'm a little bit late to the party, but I was not able to make a video right after the debate, and frankly I didn't think it was really worth doing that. So, let's talk about the debate. I'm not going to talk too much this episode. I'm going to let the candidates speak for themselves. I will just provide the necessary context so that you can't see, because this is a podcast, but I will provide the necessary context as well as to kind of prevent it being confusing, and I also don't want it to drag on too long. So at the beginning of the debate, the moderators opened up, of course, as they always do. The two candidates went on stage. Trump went for the podium. Kamala walked over to Trump's podium and lunged for a handshake, and Trump said, "Have fun." Kamala seemed to laugh a little bit. I couldn't hear what he said. He seemed a lot less enthusiastic. Of course, this is now what would be the fourth person Trump has ever debated, fourth Democrat, or I guess it would be the third. There would be Hillary, Biden, and Kamala, so this is now the third debate, third Democrat that Trump has debated. So I think he's kind of done. He feels like he's done. So I'm going to play Kamala's opening question, or her response to her very first opening statement, and let you hear that.
Kamala Harris. Let's have a good debate.
Have fun.
Thank you.
Welcome to you both. It's wonderful to have you. It's an honor to have you both here tonight.
Good evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and thoughtful debate.
So let's get started. I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their number one issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid. And I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing. And the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to start up small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy. My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year, because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
As you can see, Kamala Harris has laid out some of her big policies. That's pretty much the only policies she mentioned during the debate. The rest of it was attacking Donald Trump. And what I will note here is the New York Times did actually track the amount of time that Kamala Harris and Donald Trump were talking, as well as how much time that they were spending attacking each other. And let me bring that up for you right now. Yeah, there we go. So, Kamala Harris spoke for 37 minutes. Donald Trump spoke for 43. Of that time, Kamala Harris spent 17 minutes attacking Donald Trump, which was almost half of her time. And then Donald Trump spent 12 minutes and 54 seconds attacking Kamala Harris, even though So that was less time, even though she spoke more. She spoke less than him, yet she attacked him more. So more of her time was attacking the opponent, which is kind of the problem with this debate. I feel like Kamala Harris did not do as well as people think because she did not lay out an alternative vision for the country. She didn't really have a lot of great policies, and I was not super impressed with what she had to say. Now let me be clear, Trump didn't come off very well, and sometimes he came off as mad as a box of frogs, and you'll hear that in a moment. And this is one of the clips where that was very, very confusing, if you ask me.
I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. And just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Of course, there was some contradictory stuff on there. Like, if you have no plan, then how can you say that she has Biden's plan? I guess you could say that Biden has no plan, but then again, if Biden has no plan, then she doesn't have a plan, because you just said she doesn't have a plan. And I also want you to listen to this.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
The next issue after that was abortion. I am jumping around here because I don't think every issue is important. I mean, actually, every issue is important, but I don't think, my job is not to replay the entire debate for you, but to kind of pull out the main significant stuff. First, let me say that Kamala Harris did not endorse a limit to abortion. She did not say, like, I want it at 6 months or 7 months or 8 months, which was a smart move of her, because that will piss off her left-wing base. Minnesota, with which I believe Trump will in the clip I'm just about to play for you, Minnesota does not have a limit on abortion. Tim Walz, when he approved the law, when he signed it, it did not have a limit on abortion. Let me just say that. Now, that's not a huge deal because most abortions happen in the first or the beginning of the second trimester, not in the third trimester. So I do think this is a bit of a niche issue, but I do want to play it and I want you to hear it.
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump, you've often touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, is doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born, and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years. They've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions. Very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. And now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born.
I can guarantee you that people on the left were not happy with the Dobbs decision. Anyway, that, I think, was a decent enough answer. That was probably the best answer he could ever give. Trump's weakness is obviously abortion. His strength is going to be the economy and the border. I think he played his weaknesses okay, but he played his strengths poorly, and I think that you'll see that throughout the debate. As I mentioned, immigration was one of his big failures. He did not successfully drive that message home. I'm not saying he didn't talk about it enough. I'm just saying he wasn't able to sound coherent. As I said, mad as a box of frogs. And as I will show you in just a moment, you can see why that message didn't cut through. Let me just put the context in here. It's not super important that you hear what Kamala Harris said. They're talking about the bipartisan border bill, which I discussed on the show at the beginning, quite a while ago, and this is Trump's response to Kamala Harris.
People want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation, and it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame. As far as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again. She's destroying this country, and if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
That is not entirely true. Well, yes, they are not eating the dogs and cats. There's been no reports of that. There was reports from locals, which I will play for you right now, of people that eating ducks. And these are, by the way, these are Haitian migrants that appeared in Springfield, Ohio. I don't know when these Haitian migrants arrived in Ohio or how they even got there, but they have been overwhelming this Ohio town. And I think this is an important issue, and I think Trump could have delivered here, but he didn't. And as you just heard, that is why, because he wasn't able to coherently explain that.
I'm done with what I'm seeing. It is so unsafe in my neighborhood anymore. I have the homeless that were trying to camp out, and I have I have made concessions with them, and I try to help them the best I can to keep them from trying to squat on my property. But it is so unsafe. I have men that cannot speak English in my front yard screaming at me, throwing mattresses in my front yard, throwing trash in my front yard. And I can't. Look at me, I weigh 95 pounds. I couldn't defend myself if I had to. My husband is elderly, and last night, after living in this home for 45 years, he said, Noelle, guess what? It's time to pack up and move. He said, we can't do this anymore. He said, it's killing both of us mentally. I don't understand what you expect of us as citizens. I mean, I understand they're here under temporary protected status, and you're protecting them, and I understand that our city services are overwhelmed and understaffed. But who's protecting us? If we're protecting them, who's protecting me? I want out of this town. I am sorry. Please give me a reason to stay.
You guys are just sitting up there and something. Like, I really challenge you guys to get out here and do something. These Haitians are running into trash cans. They're running into buildings. They're running into... they flipping cars in the middle of the street. And I don't know how, like, y'all can be comfortable with this. Like, I don't know, like, who's getting paid from it. I honestly feel like someone's getting paid from it in the background. You got a bunch of people on the bus getting dropped off at a gas station to come down here. I know a single mom that FaceTimed me this morning at the welfare office that really need something. And it's nothing but immigrants over there. They're in the park grabbing up ducks by their neck and cutting their head off and walking off with them and eating them, like, and it's going to get bigger and it's only going to get worse. And y'all sitting up there in these chairs, all y'all need to get out here and do something. Y'all making hundreds of $1,000s. Y'all need to put on a t-shirt and some Crocs, and then y'all need to come out here in these streets, and y'all need to go out here and I'm out here before the police is.
Anyway, another thing I want to drive home is that Donald Trump was successfully played by Kamala. Kamala was able to instigate him. She was able to poke him, and this was one of the ways she was able to do it. And the reason is because Donald Trump is, I'm sorry, and this is going to offend a lot of Trump supporters, but Trump is a big baby. I'm not saying I won't support him. I'm just saying that Trump is a big baby. He's not able to respond. When somebody attacks him, he just has to respond. There's no getting around it. He just absolutely has to. And I sort of get that. That's kind of like what I was when I was a teenager, except I was a teenager. He's a grown man. Let me show you how he was riled up.
Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress, and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Okay, so I also want to play another clip for you. This is from March of 2021. This is when Joe Biden appointed Kamala Harris as border czar. He didn't say border czar, but he put her in charge. He's going to say, she is totally independent. She doesn't have to consult me. She is totally in charge of this. So no matter what, Kamala owns the situation on the border. It is her border. Not even necessarily Biden's border. It is her border, as you will hear.
But I've asked her, the VP today, because she's the most qualified person to do it, to lead our efforts with Mexico and the Northern Triangle and the countries that help. We're going to need help in stemming the movement of so many folks, stemming the migration to our southern border. So this new surge we're dealing with now started with the last administration, but it's our responsibility to deal with it humanely and to stop what's happening. And so this increase has been consequential. But the vice president's agreed, among the multiple other things that have been meeting, and I appreciate it, agreed to lead our diplomatic effort and work with those nations to accept the returnees and enhance migration enforcement at their borders. We're already talking with Mexico about that. She's already done that. We're going to be dealing with a full team now that we have to be able to deal with the problem here at home, but also to deal with it now in terms of in country. And I can think of nobody who's better qualified to do this than this is a woman who ran the second largest Attorney General's office in America after the United States Attorney General in the state of California, and has done a great deal upholding human rights, but also fighting organized crime in the process. So it's not her full responsibility and job, but she's leading the effort, because I think the best thing to do is to put someone who, when he or she speaks, they don't have to wonder about, is that where the president is? When she speaks for me, doesn't have to check with me, she knows what she's doing, and I hope we can move this along. So, Madam Vice President, thank you. I gave you a tough job, and you're smiling, but there's no one better capable of trying to organize this.
Well, thank you, Mr. President, and for having the confidence in me.
Anyway, that is pretty much the main stuff from the debate. I do want to play one moment where Trump shined pretty well, and that was when if you haven't heard about it, his "I'm talking now" reference, and you'll hear it in just a moment.
Fracking? She's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police? She's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now. If you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar?
Anyway, now it's time for closing statements. This was Kamala Harris's closing statement. She went first.
The time has come for closing statements, and Vice President Harris, we begin with you.
So I think you've heard tonight two very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us. And we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Maybe it's just because I'm somebody that doesn't really like Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, but Kamala Harris's closing statement was particularly weak, if you ask me. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. And the reason is because literally every single word was a platitude. Kamala Harris spent almost this entire debate speaking in platitudes, saying things like, Trump is extreme, or that we aren't going back, or we're going to create an opportunity economy. I'm not saying Trump necessarily did any better, but what I'm saying is that Kamala Harris did not entirely inspire confidence in me. Now let me play Trump's closing statement. I thought this was also particularly weak. It wasn't as bad as it could have been.
She just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack, we're not going to take fossil fuel, we're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
Okay, so that was the debate. Now, the media spent a lot of time talking about Trump's lies, so I want to respond by talking about Kamala Harris's lies. So first, let me say that 8 states have no limits on abortion, including Governor Walz's home state of Minnesota. As I've already talked about, Governor Walz has not supported a limit on abortion, an upper limit. Of course, Kamala Harris talked about the very fine people lie from Charlottesville, the idea that Trump said there are very fine people on both sides. He was not talking about the neo-Nazis or the white nationalists. I'm not going to play that because that's all over the internet. It's very obvious. I don't need to play that. Of course, January 6th, the idea that people died on January 6th, The only person that died at the Capitol was Ashley Babbitt. Everybody else, including the officers, they died off-site. And I believe they died unrelated to what happened on January 6th. So only one person died at the Capitol, and that was Ashley Babbitt. Blood, of course, Harris said that Trump referred to the election as a bloodbath, but Trump was actually talking about the automobile industry, that China is going to flood our market and it's going to be a bloodbath. The moderator said that crime is down, except the FBI has not reported a full set of crimes since 2019. That was 5 years ago. And I do not know why they haven't updated it since. Of course, I've already played about Kamala being the border czar. Trump has not endorsed Project 2025. I've talked about Project 2025, and it is not likely to be implemented even with a Republican Congress. Kamala Harris does support banning fracking. At least she did at one point. Of course, the president is not able to actually really do much to control fracking, not without an act of Congress, which is very unlikely because, as I've talked about, Republicans are almost certain to control the Senate. And even if they don't, it will be a narrow Democratic majority with at least one conservative Democrat who will not support a ban on fracking, and that would be Jon Tester in Montana. Anyway, and then lastly, Trump said that there would be, Harris supports transitioning illegal immigrants, giving them gender transitions. In 2019, Kamala Harris told the American Civil Liberties Union she supports cutting ICE funding to give gender-affirming care to detained migrants. So that was also true, what Trump said. At least it was somewhat true. Anyway, that is pretty much it I have to say about the debate. This is getting a little bit long already. So what I wanted to say is that, will there be a third debate? It seems like the answer is no. We don't know for sure, but Trump said on Truth Social, in all capitals, there will be no third debate. And this, of course, is really this is the second debate, because the first debate happened way back in June. A lot of people want to forget that ever happened, but it did. And then, of course, Trump being Trump, he U-turned and said, I could do it tomorrow, and maybe he could do it if he got in the right mood. Now, if I was the Kamala campaign, I would not be pushing for another debate. Let it die. Because the second debate, or third debate, really, is exactly where things could turn around. Trump could easily turn things around. I think Trump needs to if he's going to do a debate, he needs to prep it a lot more seriously. If I was his advisors, I would say you're only allowed to mention immigration without being asked one time, because immigration, it often makes you come out as a racist. I don't necessarily believe that supporting strong immigration makes you a racist, low immigration and no illegal immigration makes you a racist, but that's how it often comes out. Fox has sent letters to the campaigns to ask for another debate to be held sometime in October. Anyway, no matter what, there will be a vice presidential debate on October 1st unless somebody pulls out, but that looks pretty unlikely at this point. Overall, this debate got 67 million viewers. 53% said Kamala Harris won, 24% said Donald Trump won. 54% of Americans, according to an Ipsos Reuters poll, said that the first debate is enough, second debate, and the 46% want a second/third debate, and we'll have to wait and see. It's pretty evenly divided. I'd be skeptical of that poll because there's no undecideds, but anyway. That is where we're at with this debate. It is basically in the history books. I don't anticipate, it's a little bit too early for me to say whether Trump or Harris benefited. I would guess that Harris would get a slight bump from this, but I would be surprised if it lasts. My thing would be is if something else comes up, because there's always something called an October surprise, which is the idea that right in October, right before the election, some surprise comes up that changes swing voters right before the election. So we'll have to wait and see. Nobody knows what that's going to be. There might not even be one. In 2020, there wasn't really an October surprise. The Hunter Biden laptop, I wouldn't call that an October surprise. Really, the October surprise came in March, and that was COVID. Alrighty, that is pretty much all I have to say for now. I want to thank you for listening. We will have a regular episode once again next week. Not exactly sure what that's going to be, but we'll have to wait and see. There's some things going on in Congress. I'm hoping to do a collaboration with somebody if that doesn't come out next week, it'll come out the week after or a little bit later. So thank you for listening, and I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.